My name is Jennifer Anju Grossman, and I am going to draw my life. I was born in New Delhi, India. My parents eloped because of religious differences. My mom's family was Catholic from Louisiana and wanted her to get married in the church. Dad was from New York and Jewish, and he didn't want to do that. So he said, leave it all behind. And she did. They joined the Peace Corps and went to India. They took me all over the country. I got to ride on elephants, I wore bells on my feet, I had a little boyfriend named Omar, and I learned to speak Hindi. It was awesome. But then my mother got sick. Her heart wasn't beating properly and she had to go to the hospital, and they sent me back to the United States. I cried on the plane all the way to New York. But then I fell in love with my grandmother, who took great care of me. She was a painter, a sculptor, a designer, and she taught me how to embrace beauty and love. Later, my parents came back and we moved to Massachusetts. My dad was a doctor, my mom was a social worker. My brother and sister, Edward and Jessica, were born. Mom was a bit of a feminist and cut my hair and tried to get me to wear things like overalls and flannel shirts. But I wanted to grow my hair super long and wear sequins and be a disco queen. She said, if you do that, people will objectify you. That's when I discovered I was an objectivist. Okay, just kidding. I hated school. I was essentially from a different country, and I felt really different. I was kind of a nerd on the inside, but I also liked to wear sequins and ballet costumes to school. So I thought this was normal. The other kids, not so much. They put me on trial for being stuck up. This meant, apparently, thinking very highly of yourself, which I actually did. The sentence was social exile. No one was allowed to look at me or speak to me. They called it the IHJ Club. The ringleader was a girl named Darlene, who would bully me and push me around. So one day, I asked her, what do I need to do to have you leave me alone? Her answer, kill yourself. Not an option. I loved my life, and I certainly wasn't going to sacrifice it for someone who hated me. So it was then that I started to think that not only was it impossible to try and make other people like you, but it was really wrong to rely on other people to feel good about yourself. So I gave up on being popular and focused instead on being smart. I decided I was going to focus on getting the best grades and try to get into the best school. So when I got into Harvard, I said, yeah, it was worth it. I was curious about other countries and about the way the world worked, so I decided to study government. After school, I moved to the government town, Washington, D.C. And then I got a job at the White House. So I started researching and then writing speeches for the President of the United States. It was incredible. I had many great mentors and teachers, but while I was at the Cato Institute, I discovered the greatest teacher of all. Ayn Rand was an incredible woman, a courageous refugee from Russia who stood up to communism and fascism and braved all kinds of criticism to share her vision for a better, more peaceful world. She wrote about strong women like Dagny in Atlas Shrugged, and Kira in We the Living, and Dominique in The Fountainhead. So I changed my license plate to Ayn Rand and set out for Malibu, California for a new life and a new job. I bought a house, I learned to surf, I started a nutrition institute. Life was good. And then my house burned down. All my grandmother's paintings, all my books, all my photos, all my clothes. I lost everything I had ever owned. But what I did have was my mind and the philosophical resources I'd learned from Ayn Rand. I also thought about how she came to this country with nothing, how she came to LA with nothing. And look what she created. So I picked myself up and I started to rebuild. I built the kind of house that I thought Howard Rourke might build. Now I share my house not through force, as under socialism, but through voluntary association. I've hosted Airbnb guests from all over the country and all over the world, and I always tell them about Ayn Rand and what I've learned. No wonder I've had to buy Atlas Shrugged in 5 languages. So, when David Kelly, the great philosopher, asked me if I would help him take Ayn Rand's message to a new audience, what other answer could I give? But yes, Ayn Rand helped me be stronger, freer, fiercer, clearer. Her books and her ideas helped me live my fullest life. My way to help other people is to teach them about these ideas. I believe we all have an atlas inside of us. Find yours at the Atlas Society.
Hello, everybody. Is this working? Well, thank you for letting me share that story. Hi, it's good to see you. And I want to thank Jeffrey in particular for that introduction. So Jeffrey and I have known each other a really long time. As a matter of fact, I think when we first met, Donald Trump was a Democrat. And Hillary Clinton was still against gay marriage. So you can figure out how long that might have been. And we've had some very interesting adventures together. One of the most recent ones was driving across the swamp territory in Florida together. Somehow I had convinced him that it was going to be great, we're going to go on a road trip, we were going to come and I was going to dress up as Ayn Rand, and he said, sure. And so we were driving from Palm Springs to Bonita Springs to Palm Beach and all over the place. He had one requirement, though, to make this trip a little bit more bearable. He wanted to introduce me to a concept I'd never heard of called car beer. Jeffrey, was that it? Car beer? Okay. And I said, no, this is, of course not. You're not going to have a beer in my very fancy rental car. And he said, why not? You know, it's like refreshing, it's legal, it's tasty. And I said, it's tacky. So we compromised with a car champagne. And as the miles are going by, and there was a lot of miles, and as the champagne is flowing, Jeffrey is getting very sentimental, shall we say. Now, I don't think it's possible for Jeffrey Tucker to get drunk in all these years. I've never seen him drunk, but I would hypothesize that if he were to get drunk, he would be a very loving drunk. And I say this because as we're driving along, he says, oh, Jag, he calls me Jag, you're so wonderful, you're such a contradiction. And I say, Jeffrey, contradiction, I'm an objectivist, okay? Check your premises. Contradictions do not exist. He says, no, let me explain. You're so smart, and yet you're just completely disconnected from reality. It's just kind of charming. I say, Jeffrey, disconnected from reality? A is A, right? Reality exists. I'm an objectivist. That's about the meanest thing you could say. And I said, well, no, let me put it another way. You are psychotically optimistic. Oh, I'll take that. And I had actually forgotten about this whole drama until I came across the phrase again in this Salon article by Stephen Hill. Stephen Hill says, good riddance gig economy, Uber, Ayn Rand, and the awesome collapse of Silicon Valley's dream of destroying your job. He also wrote how the Uber economy and runaway capitalism are screwing American workers. Well, I probably am going to disagree with him on several points. We come from radically different philosophical traditions, shall we say. I would say that anybody who uses words like runaway capitalism screwing American workers probably hasn't read Ayn Rand. And I also disagree with him on one of the arguments that he has against the sharing economy. He says that really what we need to figure out is how we are going to come up with a portable safety net for all American workers. Sounds kind of familiar, right? And I know that whenever people talk about, well, we have to do something, what they really mean is not we, but me, okay? They're going to figure it out, and I am somehow going to pay for it. And that's true whether it's in Europe or whether it's in Eastern Europe. And the truth is, it's not really me because my main taxable years are behind me. So it's actually you. So I would get a little suspicious anytime somebody talks about that. I also, though, found that I agreed with him on a couple of points. One is he says that the sharing economy is not about sharing at all. And I think that's a good thing. And I'm going to tell you why. And he also said, well, not everybody is cut out to be a gig entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur requires a distinctly unique, wired brand of individuals, including being psychotically optimistic. Simply being jobless is not a sufficient job qualification. Well, that's true, except I'll tell you, it's a good place to start. And you can take it from me. Jeffrey was actually there on that day when well, not that day. No, he was there on that day too. When I got the news that, Dole was going to be splitting apart after 12 years, I'd had this fancy job and all my expenses, and all of a sudden, boom, that was not going to happen anymore. I didn't see that one coming. Although, in retrospect, duh. I mean, this was like the kind of business that Dole was in was not, long for this world. So I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? I had no idea what I was going to do. And Jeffrey was there on that day. I'll let him tell you that story at some other time. But so for one night, I thought, okay, I'm just not going to deal with this. I took an Ambien. I just took my get unconscious pill. But in the morning, as Ayn Rand says, you can evade reality, but you can't avoid the consequences of reality. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I had a couple of ideas, okay, of what I could possibly do. I talked to my friends, and because I didn't know what to do, and one friend said, well, why don't you Airbnb? I was like, what is Airbnb? I never heard of that. It's like 3 years ago. And I said, well, you can rent out your house or rent out parts of your house to strangers. And another friend of mine said, oh, I could never do that. I can't imagine strangers in my house. I thought, yeah, I can't imagine that either. That sounds kind of bad. So I tried to imagine what I would do other than doing Airbnb. I had a very active imagination. So I imagined that. I didn't want to do that. I imagined that, selling my car. I didn't like that. I kept on trying to, that, I definitely didn't want to do that, right? That, I don't know, maybe it could be kind of fun. So that's where this whole situation was going, all right, in Malibu. And so I started to think, maybe I can imagine how to be an Airbnb host. And I think we're going to actually play what my house looks like right now. So I went on, I researched it, I figured it out. I called it Scorpius because I'm a Scorpio. Yes, you can be an objectivist and know your astrological sign. Any other Scorpios out there? I'll meet you later. Just kidding. But what I am not kidding about is I want to have somebody here come and visit me in Malibu, okay? So you have to figure out your transportation, but I will host you for a week. You come surfing, you will come, no, you're not invited. And we'll go hiking, we'll have a party. So somebody here is going to be able to do that, or Kate Andrews is also included. I know she's not here. But I'm going to tell you 5 things that I would like you to do in order to be considered. Well, you say, well, wait a second, that's not sharing. You want me to do something? Just do something for me, and I don't have to do anything, right? It's a sharing economy. Well, those people would be socialists, and they're likely not here. So I'm going to tell you about what you will get by coming and visiting me, and what you'll get by just doing these 5 things that I'm going to have you do. You will get the benefit of learning about Ayn Rand, about learning about objectivism, particularly open objectivism, which is our distinct approach at the Atlas Society. And that philosophy, I believe, helped me overcome a lot of hard things in my life and can help you overcome a lot of the hard things that, sorry to let you know, are coming in your life. But it'll also, more importantly, help you become a winner, become a Hank Rearden, become a John Galt. And you'll be getting this also at the benefit of some of the really, really embarrassing, horrible mistakes that I have made to make myself a better Airbnb host. So I'm going to tell you one of the most embarrassing things that happened. It was the first night of my being a host. So I put the listing up there, and I get a booking right away. Not for this room, this is the guest room, but I got a booking for the whole house. And I thought, oh, great. And then I realized they were coming in 3 hours. Okay, so it was another thing that I learned, to be prepared, to be, ready, aim, fire, not fire, aim, frantically try to get ready. But that's what I was doing. So I'm making the room, and I'm getting the flowers, and putting out the fruit bowl, and the people that are coming, it's 2 guys driving a Ferrari, going to an antique car show in California, as opposed to the antique car shows in California that we also have. But they arrive, great, nice guys, they go out to dinner, and I go down to, I've made a room off my office next to my Porsche that I don't have to sell now. And I'm researching, I'm on Wi-Fi, how can I be a better host? And I see one thing, it says, well, you can bake things for people. Like, you should maybe bake them some banana bread or whatever. And I thought, darn it, I had cookie mix, in the refrigerator. I could have made them cookies. It's too late now. Oh no, maybe I should have made the cookies. No, the cookies, I should have made, I couldn't stop thinking about the cookies. So anyway, I decided to get unconscious. And the next day, I woke up and I came to the kitchen, and there were cookies everywhere. And when I mean everywhere, I don't mean just on the counter. They were on the floor, they were on the stairs leading up to, the guest room. This is not a dream, this was a nightmare. This is actually something that I did. I sleep baked. So this is really, really bad. I'm so embarrassed. And then I see a note, okay, in the midst of all of these crumbs, and that was me going to sleep. Yeah, no, not a good idea. At a note, the guests say, "Dear Jennifer, thanks for the cookies. We know that this was your first time hosting on Airbnb. for future reference, when you rent out your home, you're not supposed to be there. We hope you're feeling better. So that was really, really embarrassing. And I promise that when you come to visit me, I will not bake you cookies. I will be there. So if you are still brave enough to want to do this, then here's the 5 things that I want you to do. I want you to like the Atlas Society Facebook page. Follow the Atlas Society on Twitter if you're on Twitter. We're also on Gab. Follow us on Instagram. Share the video that Jeffrey showed you at the beginning. And then we have 2 more Draw My Life videos. 3 more actually. One of Ayn Rand and one of Dagny Taggart. Both Ayn Rand and Dagny Taggart have gotten over 1 million views. I think the Ayn Rand got 11,000 shares, so hopefully we'll get another 1,000 shares. So why did those people do that? Like, why didn't they just fire me? Because it's not like a regular corporate job where you can get fired, but you have a huge amount of control in a peer-to-peer economy. So, I mean, if they'd give me a 1-star review or whatever, that would have been over. My Airbnb career would have been over before it had even begun. Why were they so kind of forgiving and generous and kind? Well, I would say it was a rational thing to do, and it's the kind of kindness, it's the kind of generosity that the sharing economy encourages. So instead of encouraging random acts of kindness, I call them Randian acts of kindness. Because when you come to my home, I want you to feel special, I want you to feel like you're having a great experience, but this is completely wired in to my self-interest, okay? Being a good host, making sure that the other person on the other side of the transaction is happy, that is really what the sharing economy does. Now, what is the history of home sharing, okay? The history of home sharing has not been about people finding extra space and voluntarily making it available. The history of home sharing was the kind of home sharing that Ayn Rand experienced, okay, when the soldiers came and took over her apartment and took over the store and said, okay, now you're the apartment where you and your parents and your 2 little sisters live, it's going to be home sharing, okay? It's kind of like Airbnb, but we choose who gets to live with who. And in We the Living, if you haven't read it, it is one of my... Has anybody read We the Living? The rest of you have a great adventure ahead of you. It's Ayn Rand's first novel, and it really does tell the story of... it's all about home sharing. It's all about, she and Leo, and everybody has to share their house. So in closing, what I really find special about Airbnb is not only does it help me or help you or help someone, if you find some kind of gig, to be able to do something more creative. I mean, I couldn't be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for having Airbnb as a backup. But it promotes independence. It promotes all of these, I think, objectivist values. It promotes integrity. If I say, hey, the house is like this, and it's not, and I'm being fraudulent, that's not going to get me very far. It promotes self-esteem because, you go through a terrible thing, like losing your job or having your house burned down and being in debt, and it allows you to get out of it. It promotes reason because, you really have to be clear with the idea that somebody is coming in 3 hours and be prepared for them. It promotes trust and innovation. So, in the end, that's what I would, and here's some of my pictures from some of my guests I'm playing. So I would say Stephen Hill kind of got it wrong because he treated, he still kind of thinks of the economy in the traditional worker boss model, and I think that the new economy that's emerging is really more about being a peer-to-peer. Would Ayn Rand have been an Airbnb host? Yeah, she might have been. Her profile probably would have been something like Russian refugee seeks selfish guests, chain smokers preferred, altruists need not apply. And my profile isn't quite as Randian as that, but I do have a whole bookshelf of Jeffrey Tucker and von Mises, and of course Ayn Rand. I do have my NRA sticker on the door. I don't hide where I'm coming from, which is still pretty unusual, in the United States. And I haven't gotten too many people that, really pushed back against that. I think more of what's happened is that they came in with a certain set of assumptions about the kind of people that might be into these ideas, or the kind of person that might, believe in gun rights, or the kind of person that might be Jewish, and that by spending time together, that maybe they were able to modify some of their ideas. So that's it. And I hope that we can continue this conversation online and throughout the rest of the day. I hope you all come to the 5 o'clock that we're having with Jeffrey, and perhaps, again, hopefully in Europe and perhaps in Malibu. So, thank you.
I have a question about your experience with some unusual guests, because if you're so open about who you are and what you believe in, I'm sure there were some people who on purpose booked a place at your house just to prove that you're wrong. So they were like open socialists or statists. So could you tell us a story of a guest who came to you just to troll you?
Well, they are welcome to troll away, as I am, crying all the way to the bank. But I think that's, again, one of the amazing things is that doesn't happen. I have not had that experience, and I've had hundreds of guests come. I did have somebody come, and they were not happy about the gun safe, so I can understand that. They didn't feel safe with guns in the house. So, I do make some modifications. I have to constantly, not drop my ego, but again, be really open to feedback. So I have to say, well, gee, really is it that important? Maybe it isn't the right thing to do. Maybe the door is squeaking. Maybe the fridge does deserve another cleaning. What I've had is the opposite, actually. I had a guest, Fanny Milinarsky, recently. She's a Russian emigre, and she sought me out because she was an Ayn Rand fan, and she was a part of the Objectivist Club in Massachusetts. So she came, and she wanted to spend some time together and kind of brainstorm about how we could work together. So no, I'm not getting the trolls, and I do also have to hand it to Airbnb, because while they have created this platform for micro-capitalism and entrepreneurship, I think that's not where their head's at, kind of in terms of like their corporate culture. And so, if anything, I've been kind of afraid that they would say, well, this is not a good representative of, who we are as Airbnb. So far, they've been great.
My name is Jan, and I'm Czech. I'll be in LA in about 2 months. No, my question is, what do you think about the new terms of service at Airbnb that bans discrimination? So you basically are not allowed to select your guests according to their political beliefs, for example. Thanks.
That is a really excellent question. So what he's referring to now is, and this is when I talk about kind of the culture at Airbnb, they feel that their priority is to make sure that there is not discrimination against LGBT, whatever, okay, the rest of the alphabet. And they even they sponsored the Courage Award for Jenner. I can't keep up with the names, but that's a big priority, and they do make they feature a lot in their advertising gay couples, and I mean, I am like, I have my entire gay entourage and several gay husbands, so I love it, and I'm very much for human rights. I don't believe that there are gay rights or women's rights or anything other than human rights. But I did find this offensive, that they made this change, because why would we discriminate, okay? And we do discriminate, of course. And people should be allowed to discriminate, and the market should be allowed to show that when you discriminate, guess what? You're going to lose. I don't know, maybe you'll find your little niche in your Nazi Airbnb. But in general, if you are applying irrational standards to your business transactions, you are going to lose in the market. So, but hey, you know what? It's their company. I'm getting a huge benefit from being able to participate on it. And I feel that by going to the Airbnb conferences, as I've done, and sharing with them my point of view, and to say that they would like to get more buy-in from Middle America, they'd like to get more conversion to hosts in Middle America, that you don't kind of start out with an implicit insult, that you're talking to people that you are just going to assume are bigots, okay? It's just not a really good way to start the conversation. Any other questions? Mm-hmm. Yes.
And Howard Rogue just in that novel earns money so he can build his own house in the way he loves it, and that's by definition is being selfish or being first-handed. So how do you be selfish in kind of like decorating your house or making the house an object or a mirror of yourself?
Thank you. And yes, I do agree. Like Howard Rourke, what did he do? He went and he worked in a quarry, okay? He didn't have a lot of alternatives. And maybe if he could have, if there was a gig economy for mining or quarry working, he might have done that. And then, the other thing is that, like I said, there were other choices, okay? I did have other choices. I could have probably found another corporate job and just continued to sleep in Malibu as opposed to living in Malibu. When I first left Dole, my housekeeper, who had been with me for years, said, "What the hell happened to this house? It's just completely messy. Everything is everywhere." I said, "Well, it's because I used to just sleep here. Now I live here. So I do mess things up a little bit." But I'd say the house, the Paul Evans furniture, which is very sort of 80s, and the aesthetic is a little bit more masculine. The windows, the structure, it was built by Thomas Osinski, who was a Polish refugee, and also my contractor were all from Poland, and so they were very more conservative than libertarian. So I really feel like they could feel that aesthetic. And the whole experience of building the house, though, is just a whole other issue of having to deal with the regulatory state that we have in California. But you will just have to come and see and judge for yourself. And also, a lot of the furniture there that you see in the Draw My Life was from my grandmother, who was the first woman president of the American Society of Interior Design, and a communist. But the fact that she and other Jewish intellectuals of that era, of the 30s and the 40s, were drawn to communism, I think also speaks to the bravery and courage of Ayn Rand in coming here. And, she could have said, all right, the way to be popular is, well, let me write novels about, how horrible businessmen are. But she went straight against that narrative and had a lot of resistance. The Fountainhead got rejected 12 times before it got accepted. But she stayed true to her ideals and lived a hard life, took a lot of knocks, but I think in the end lived a life that she was very proud of. So Ayn Rand's going to visit you later this afternoon, so come up with your really hard questions for what you might ask Ayn Rand. later on. And so I'll be around. I'll see you guys at around 5 o'clock.